Okay, no problem. And we are live.
Thank you. Right, good evening and welcome to this meeting of South Oxfordshire District Council's Planning Committee. I'm Councillor David Brotherton and I'll be chairing this meeting. May I remind everyone that this is a meeting in public and not a public meeting. Only members of the public who are registered to speak are allowed to do so, and I'll call them to speak during the appropriate agenda item. The meeting is being held at our offices in Abbey House, Abingdon. Committee members are here in person, but officers and speakers are able to join remotely. This meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel for public viewing. The system allows councillors who are unable to attend in person to contribute to the meeting, but only councillors who are present in the room are allowed to vote. For speakers and other members of the public who have logged in remotely, please ensure that your microphone is muted and that your camera is off for the duration of the meeting until you are called to speak. Not taking any notice on it. We'll go back to that one. The Planning Committee is the decision-making committee of the Council, and it is important that the set procedure is followed. All committee members have received a full report on each application, either on paper or electronically. We will first hear from the planning officer, followed by the parish or town council, then objectors, supporters and local members in turn. Each group will have 5 minutes to speak to the committee, after which members may ask questions of the speakers. The committee will then ask questions of clarification of the planning officer. It should be noted that committee members and officers may be using electronic devices for reference throughout this meeting. The committee will then debate and vote on each application. Councillors wishing to ask a question or participate in the debate are asked to indicate this by alerting yourself or officers by raising a hand. Voting will be by show of hands. Members, please raise your hand clearly and keep it raised to allow a count to take place. If it is unclear how members are voting through a show of hands, I will ask the clerk to undertake a roll call of those present and how they are voting. A few short housekeeping announcements. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is in the corridor immediately to the right of this meeting room, and then go to assembly point 9 in the outside area beyond the fire exit. The Democratic Services Officer here present will help you. However, please ensure that their mobile phones are switched to silent or switched off during the meeting. Members of the public who wish to leave the meeting after their application has been heard are welcome to do so by the front door in reception. When the meeting is finished, I will ask for confirmation that the live stream has ended. At that point, please leave the meeting or make your way out of the building. Remember to sign out as you leave. I just go back to the earlier point. If you're logged in remotely, can you please switch your camera off to ensure that the bandwidth is maintained? Thank you. Right, that was agenda item 1. Agenda item 2 is apologies for absence.
We have apologies from councillors Axel MacDonald and Tim Beard this evening, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And no substitutes?
No substitutes.
Okay. Agenda item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting to adopt and sign as a correct record the planning committee minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of August 2024. Proposer, thank you. A seconder, thank you. Any comments on that meeting? No. All those in favour? Thank you. I'll sign it later. Declaration of interest. To receive declarations of disposable pecuniary interest or other registrable interests or non-registrable interests or any conflicts of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. I see none. Great. Urgent business. To receive notification of any urgent business. Do we have any urgent business?
No urgent business.
No urgent business. Okay, we'll move straight on then to agenda item, whatever it is, 7, which is 43 Spring Hill Road, Goring. Application P20 S2488. And the planning officer is Catherine Pierce. Welcome, Catherine. Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. First, can I provide an update? The Highways Officer at Oxfordshire County Council has asked that the uncontrolled crossing proposed at the site entrance of Wallingford Road be moved slightly, and has requested a condition to this effect, so that could be added to the recommendation.
Can you say slightly? How slightly?
So it's on one side of the bus stop caging, and they would like it moved to the other end of the bus stop caging, so it's not very far.
Okay.
Catherine, could I just ask that for the benefit of Councillor Rob, you could repeat that so she's able to participate in this item?
I would be so grateful. Thank you, Catherine.
I just started, so that's fine.
Great.
The Highways Officer at OCC has asked that the uncontrolled crossing proposed at the site entrance to Wallingford Road be moved slightly from where it is shown, and has requested a condition to this effect, because that could be added onto the recommendation. So this is a full application for planning permission for the erection of 44 dwellings and the demolition of 43 Spring Hill Road, Goring. So it's a net gain of 43 dwellings. The site is allocated in the Goring Neighbourhood Plan Policy .08 for approximately 46 homes, and is known in the plan as GNP6. So the site's located on a prominent hillside in Goring, within the open rolling downs landscape. Can you all see that clearly enough? I need to zoom in a bit. So the site's in yellow here. And I first wanted to point out to you that the Chilterns National Landscape is washes over this area up to the River Thames, which is the blue, you can see here. And then on the other side of the River Thames is the North Essex Downs National Landscape. Was AONB, now National Landscape. So the site is within one national landscape and within the setting of another. And I'll also point out a few other things that I'm going to refer to later. So over here on the western side, this is the nationally sized land at Larden Chase and Lough Down. And there are views to the site from this location. Moving over to roughly where it says Goring, just here, this is what's known locally as Cow Hill. And again, there are views looking north to the site from there. To the north of the site, up here where it says Spring Farm, this is the area where the neighbourhood plan is concerned about views of housing over the crest on the hill, and I'll explain a bit about that later. So that's where that is, and then just to the left of that, this yellow line, that's Spring Lane, and that crosses over the railway line, as I mentioned in the report. So I'll show you the proposed site layout. So as you see, it's largely rectangular in shape. This is the access here from Wallingford Road, and down, it's very slow, isn't it? Down at this end to the south, this is a pedestrian cycle link onto Spring Hill Road, which gives access towards the village, and it's a requirement in the neighbourhood plan for this access to be provided. And the existing bungalow, as I mentioned before, number 43, will be demolished to provide this access through. I said that the site was allocated in the neighbourhood plan, but the application doesn't actually cover the entire allocation because of different landowners. So this area here is outside, it's known as the triangle, funnily enough, and there's a current application for 3 dwellings on that one. And here to the west, this is there's a manege, and there's remnants of an orchard there. So those are both outside of the application site, but within the allocation. So the proposed layout, as you see here, it's been designed to take account of the landform of the site, the way it sort of curves around this way, and hopefully you can see that in this extract I've taken from the landscape and visual impact assessment. So you can see the contours sweeping across here. This is the highest point of the site, what we often refer to as the crest of the hill at 74 metres. The site then falls away down to the south and also across to the east. I'll take you through some photographs of the site now. As I say, they're all taken. I've started in this sort of corner here and moved down, across, and back up. So that's the sort of direction that the photos are taken from. So this is looking down across the site, looking south. You can see Cow Hill. It was a particularly dark day. You should be able to see Cow Hill over here. But if I could zoom in that. Yes, okay, so that's Cow Hill on the other side there. And you can see this is the highest point to the site and how it falls away. This is looking down the western boundary. Again, there's a better shot of the Cow Hill. You can see the western boundary just here. This is looking east across the top of the site, and you can make out how the land falls away to the eastern boundary here. This is taken looking north, beyond the site to the rolling landscape beyond. So the mouse sound is not helpful there. Again, the western boundary and the remnants of the orchard and the manege just beyond the site boundary. This is taken from the southwestern corner, the bottom of the site, looking along the southern boundary. And you can see there the mature trees along the southern boundary, many of which are protected by a tree preservation order. And then the dwellings of Spring Hill Road lead on from there. This is looking back up north, back up the slope, so you can sort of see the gradient of the site. This is from the southern boundary. Again, you can sort of see the way the land falls across to the eastern boundary, which is those trees you can see on the right. This is from the northeastern corner, again showing you the gradients of the site and the sort of trees in the far distance. It's the National Trust land. That is again looking north. I particularly wanted to point out here these trees and this little white dwelling here. These are the sort of Spring Farm area that I referred to before. So that's their location relative to the site. And this is looking back towards where the access point would be. So it would be around right where these trees are, just here. You can see again how the site falls away towards the road. So in order to minimise the landscape impact of the access coming into the site, the road has been supposed to sink that access road as per the neighbourhood plan. We've got some sections to show you here. So the steepest part of the site, it would be have to be sunk by around 3 meters. So that's the top one here, and this is at the highest part of the site where it sort of joins onto the rectangular bit, and the other one is closer to the site entrance. I'll also show you some site sections to demonstrate the sort of level of cut and fill that's required for development. So you can quickly make out this line is the existing landform. So as you see at the top of the slope, there's the greatest level of cut and fill required. But as we move towards the eastern boundary, there's less cut and fill required. So it was suggested by the Chilterns AONB board to remove the top 4 dwellings. But just to point out that even if that were to happen, it would still need to be level at this point for access into the site, and then there would need to be some sort of retaining feature for this part. So the key requirement of the neighbour plan policy, as I mentioned, is that the development doesn't break the crest of the hill, 74 metres that I showed you. So when viewed from Wallingford Road, policy requires cross sections demonstrating the housing will be below the crest of the hill from the Spring Farm area, but thought that this 3D model that you had a preview of a second ago was demonstrated it a bit better. So this is their sort of made the hill transparent, so you can see that the dwellings would just tuck in below the crest of the hill when viewed from that particular point. Here's Spring Farm cottages. The landscape officer has said that whilst it is below the crest of the hill, there is little margin for error. Just to point that out. This is a photograph I took on again the dark day from that location. It wasn't very easy to obtain because there's no footway there. It's a fast road. So as I mentioned in the report, views from this sort of Wallingford Road area are likely to be fleeting from a moving vehicle. There's another vantage point from the north side that I mentioned in the report, which is the railway bridge. This is the view from there. The site up here. This is a lower vantage point, so would be hidden behind the crest of the hill from here. So moving to the viewpoints from the south, which are more significant and readily available. This is taken from Cow Hill. The site would be located here. So this is from the top of the hill. The existing mature trees would screen the site to some extent, but dwellings would be visible up the slope. However, as you see, it's a panoramic view. The development would be seen in context of the existing village, and the rolling countryside would still be a key part of the view. This one is taken from Loft Down, the National Trust land. I'll definitely need to zoom in on this one. So the site tucks in here. So what's striking from this viewpoint is the tree coverage in Goring throughout the village, and also particularly containing the edge. In the report mentioned by Sunny Way, which you could just about make out here, which is quite a stark edge because there isn't any planting just behind that, and that's picked up in one of the landscape reports supporting the neighbour plan as well. So really emphasising the key to getting trees along the boundary and also throughout the site to successfully integrate a development into the village. So as you've seen, the site is steeply sloping, as its location on a hillside would suggest. Oxfordshire County Council maintains an objection to the application because some of the gradients on the site are steeper than 1 in 20. In the report, I've referred to 1 in 12, but please disregard this. It's more relevant to shorter distances such as ramps. So 1 in 20 is the figure that we really need to be looking at. So OCC has stated that the gradients are not compliant with the Equality Act 2010 and would exclude those who are mobility impaired from accessing the site other than by means of private vehicles. In addition, steeper gradients would generally deter travel to and from the development by walking and cycling. As a result, OCC would not enter into a Section 38 agreement for adoption of the estate roads and footways or a private streets agreement. So just to dig in a bit more to the gradients issue. This doesn't show all that well, does it? So this plan is supposed to show the areas where the gradients meet the 1 in 20 or shallower and where they don't. So sort of blue sections where it does and orange where it doesn't. So let's zoom in a bit. So this shows that the roads travelling across the site are fine. They meet the required gradients, but it's the ones that are going north and south down the slope that don't. So at the access road, got 1 in 12. This area here also says 1 in 12. So this part down here is 1 in 15. Again, this is fine along this way. And then leading down to the pedestrian access, we've got 1 in 15, 1 in 10, 1 in 17 and a half, I think that says. And then without flat landing points, which I will come back to in a minute. This pedestrian access would be 1 in 15.
Catherine's waiting. I should wait.
Lots of questions. Sorry, could you just, sorry, could you just, you made the point that the county council wouldn't adopt the roads. So what would happen there? Sorry, Chairman.
That's all right, we'll come back to that.
Okay, all right.
Let's go through the presentations and then come back to that question.
So in order to achieve the gradients across the site, further significant retaining structures would be needed, which would be unacceptable from a landscape perspective. So the requirement to meet a 1 in 20 gradient of the site is really one, in this case, that is fundamental to whether the site is developable or not. The Mobility Issues Group, Goring and Streetley, MIGS, have been active in commenting on the application during the course of it. They suggested moving the wheelchair accessible dwelling, which was at the top of up here, moving it further down, which has been done. And they've suggested that the pedestrian link have some flat landing points where people could rest and that benches be provided there. So the applicants provided a plan to show they can achieve 3 flat landings, which is great. So this would result in some sections steeper than the 1 in 15 that you would get if it was without landings. So again, got flat bits, 1 in 10, flat, 1 in 10, flat, 1 in 14. It wasn't intended, it's not intended for these to include benches as requested by MIGS because of the concern on the impact this might have on the amenity of the adjoining neighbours. But benches could be included if committee consider it necessary. I'll just quickly show you some photos of 43 Spring Hill Road, particularly the sort of garden area. So that's the bungalow 43 Spring Hill Road to be demolished. Just try and get a feel for the gradient of it. It's the garden. Looking at the garden. This is the looking at the boundary with number 41, which I thought you were looking at then was to the left, and the boundary with number 45 on the other side. This is right at the top of the garden where it would connect to the site. This is the boundary with 45 and 41. And that's just looking back down the garden to try and demonstrate the sort of slope that we've got there. I'll just finish off by showing you some house type elevations. You've got some appended to the report, so I've tried to show you some different ones. This is house type 1, so this would be the 4 dwellings along the top of the slope. And I'd like to suggest to committee that, as per Goring Parish Council's requested, a condition removing permitted development rights for these 4 units is put on, restricting such things as outbuildings under Class E, roof lights, satellite dishes, chimneys, and other alterations to the roof to ensure that it's kept below the crest of the hill, as has been demonstrated. So This one is a 4-bed, 3-bed, that's it, 3-bed. Here we've got one of the affordable dwellings. It's a 1-bed and 2-bed semi-detached. And this is one of the 4 beds. These 3 are different to the ones you've got appended to your report. And materials would be required by condition, samples of materials, given that this is an A or B location and we need good quality materials. So to conclude, this is the largest allocation in the Goring neighbourhood plan, and therefore a significant proportion of its neighbourhood of its proposed growth. Officers and the parish council have worked with the applicant to find an acceptable scheme for the site, taking into account its many constraints. On balance, it is considered that the benefits of the proposal outweigh the harm, and therefore it is recommended for approval.
Right, thank you, Catherine. I'm sure committee have got lots of questions on all that. But I think it's right. So we hear the other presentations or other speakers, and then I'll come back to Catherine with those questions. I'm sure she's prepared. I have a number of speakers. The first one on my list is Councillor Mike Stairs. That's you. Okay, okay. Do you like to come to the table, please?
Hello. So just introduce myself. So my name is Mike Stairs. I'm a councillor at Goring, chairman of the planning committee at Goring, and I was co-chairman of the neighbourhood plan steering group for 4 years prior to this. So
Take your seat there.
oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I just read this statement to you? This is a
you have
proof
5
statement
minutes
by
to
the
speak.
parish council. It takes 2 minutes 48 seconds, if that's okay.
I'll time you on that.
So I've introduced myself. Just to say a bit about Goring. Goring-on-Thames is quite a unique environment, entirely within one national landscape and overlooked by another. There are steep hills to the east and to the west overlooking the village. The River Thames runs right through the village on the western boundary with a significant floodplain, and the village sits over a huge aquifer, if that's the right way of pronouncing aquifer. There are therefore major constraints to housing in putting in new major housing in Goring. However, on the other side of the coin, Goring has a strategic need to support a shift in demographics to a much younger population, and we need to build new, smaller and affordable houses to support that change in demographics. The neighbourhood plan was made in 2019. All of the sites available in the build area of Goring were evaluated, 15 sites in total, evaluated in detail. All of the sites had problems, but 4 sites were allocated for major development as, quote, the least worst sites. And that's a phrase that comes out of the examiner's report, the least worst sites. The plan went through a public hearing, an examination by a planning barrister who incidentally visited this site as part of his procedure. And just to be clear, there are no other sites for major development suitable in Goring. These 4 sites, which this is by far the largest, went through detailed consultation. The neighbourhood plan has a requirement for 94 new houses, mainly small to medium and 40% affordable. The site is by far the largest of the sites that have been identified, and it's actually about approximately half of our new houses in the village. If this planning application fails, then by definition, the neighbourhood plan fails in its objective for putting in smaller houses and affordable houses. And Goring will be left significantly short of new, small and affordable houses. For a year, the parish council has supported this planning application in our consultation submissions. We hope the committee approve the application. However, on the other hand, we fully understand local residents' concerns and we are keen to minimise the impact on them. And I request that following approval, that Goring Parish Council is formally consulted on some of the conditions that come into the officer's report, namely the construction management plan, the landscape plan, the lighting plan, the children's playground, which we think is important, and the materials being used. And then very finally, can I say on a personal level, I'd like to thank the planning officer for her skill and hard work in bringing this planning application to this stage, where it could be considered by the committee, and for so professionally considering the planning balances caused by, what is a complex site. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stead. Say there, because I'm sure the committee have questions for you. Councillor Gordon Green.
Thank you, Chair. In the deliberations, the application as is with the 4 houses at the top because there seems to possibly be some issues with ridge lines and views and things, and also housing mix. Is the council satisfied with having that in the mix as is, or would there be room for for meeting the objectives?
No, so we are satisfied with the housing mix in here and the ratio of small houses that it covered. The original application, so I'm speaking off script if I may, the original application that from memory had 7 or 8 houses at that top level, and the developer, I think this is right, Catherine, removed those that were definitely going to be the most visible, and we're satisfied that these are below the ridge line. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I hear that you're okay with it. And one more question to do with green space. Is the council satisfied with the ratio of green space relative to build form?
Yes, so the landscape plan that has been referred to, the council would like to be consulted. That's a condition that's in this, would like to be consulted on that because the green appearance of this site is crucial. The green space that's at the top of that site is within the specification that we asked for, where the playground is. And then coming into the site, the greenery around the entrance to the site where the developer is proposing a kind of natural orchard. The type of trees in there are important in terms of longevity and height and such like, but yes.
I'm not going to commit planning officers to this, but I'm sure that the Parish Council will be consulted when all those things are finalised. One question for myself, this is an allocated site in the neighbourhood plan, and congratulations on that, but we've now got difficulties over the slope. And were those anticipated within the neighbourhood plan? Or were they just, we'll deal with that when you get there?
Yes, so to the extent that it's always been known, because people have visited the site, that this site is on a slope.
Yeah.
And the first indication we had from OCC that they had an issue with the slope, the gradient of the roads, was actually quite well into, I mean, Catherine will know this better than I, but quite well into the process. So originally when the site was allocated, the gradients, to the best of my knowledge, were not raised as a significant issue, although everybody knew, of course, the site was on a hill.
Yeah, but were OCC would be involved in that consultation?
Yes, absolutely. They were absolutely involved in the consultation prior to the neighbourhood plan. And to the best of my recollection, there was no objection raised whatsoever about the gradients.
Okay, Councillor Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Further to that point, Councillor Steers, are you aware if OCC's policies around gradients were the same then when you were going as they are now?
I'm sorry, I have no idea.
Fine.
All I can say is if you walk around the country, in the West Country, there are plenty of roads with houses with steep hills. So that's all I can say. But that's a bit of a layman's.
Yeah, it's a colour. Okay,
thank you.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like said. Okay. Our next speakers are Sarah Jane Dexter and Tim Rothwell. Tom Rothwell, sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah. One of you's here, the other one it said is spiritual, and I don't see.
Yes.
Yes, you don't. You're there. Which one of you speaking? You know, 5 minutes between you. So.
Sarah, you go first. No one.
If you don't go there, we can't ask you questions. So Sorry, if you don't sit there, we can't ask you a question.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Please do say something.
And I should say,
Okay.
just like Mike said, I'm Tom Rothwell. I live on Spring Hill Road, not immediately behind this site.
Yeah.
And like Mike, I was one of the steering group of the neighbourhood plan. In fact, I was a project manager who helped manage the creation of the neighbourhood plan. So I'm quite familiar with it. Thank you.
Okay. I did see her. Sarah Jane Dexter, you there? I did see her.
She is.
Yes,
She's
yes.
on.
Could you put your camera on, do you think? You have 5 minutes when you first start speaking, but yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to, I was working before, but you blocked something on here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, yeah.
Can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you now. Yeah, that's good. All right.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
So you
great.
have 5 minutes
Look.
between you from now.
Okay, I'll start. Good evening, councillors and officers. My name is Sarah Jane Dexter. My property is 86 Wallingford Road. I am also speaking on behalf of a significant number of neighbouring properties along Wallingford Road. The officer report makes much of the fact that the site is allocated in the Goring Neighbourhood Plan. This is correct. However, this allocation was and remains subject to minimising harm to the national significant landscape within which it sits and not to be visible or break the ridgeline. The officer report confirms throughout that this has still not been achieved, even after all the variations submitted over the last 4 years or so. The northernmost houses, now comprising of 4 very large detached dwellings, pushed the development unacceptably northwards into the sensitive landscape, viewable from an astonishing large area from 2 national landscapes. The officer's report suggests that this significant landscape harm is okay because it's an allocated site. But this is not the correct approach. The site is allocated for housing only, if and subject to avoiding or at least minimalising landscape harm. Agreeing to the housing as now proposed must simply not be at the expense of irreversible harm to the national protected landscape. This is too high a price to pay for providing houses. The 4 northernmost houses must be deleted from the scheme. This will provide a huge improvement and reduction in harm to the landscape. It may also provide an opportunity to revisit the Spine Road and help to address long-standing and still current highways concerns and objections. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rothwell, you sir.
Good evening. This planning application does not comply with planning policy in a number of areas, but critically in those policies that make adequate provision for the mobility impaired. Planning officer has erroneously used planning balance to reach a recommendation, but this will be the disadvantage of the disabled and elderly. The developer could revise their layout to solve these issues if they wanted to, or were required to. Why should we accept a substandard scheme because of the pressure on delivering housing numbers? The disabled, the elderly and future generations won't thank us. But the recommendation is flawed in a number of areas. In paragraph 7.1.102, the statement is made that once the site's been allocated, the council needs to find a way to make this acceptable, but it's been stretched too far. Too many concessions have been made in site layout, landscape impact and housing mix. And there's been no coordination across the 2 current applications, the triangle and this one. They're adjacent sites, they're part of the same allocation. They compose over 90% of the allocation, but they haven't been considered together. The officer's report acknowledges that the application does not comply with the Equality Act 2010, with the Local Transport Connectivity Plan, with SODC's own policies, Trans 5, H11 and DSE 1, and I do not agree that it complies with GMP 8, the policy under the Goring Neighbourhood Plan. Briefly, the officer has misapplied the planning balance by accepting a housing mix that violates policy H11 with no one-bed market homes and in excess of 4-bed homes. And Goring doesn't need 4-bed homes. We did a housing survey. It's got lots of them. 4 and 5 bed homes, we don't even access them. Lower income buyers won't need us for this, won't thank us for that. It's not only got too many large houses, it's got too many houses full stop. The officer said that in an email to the developer back at the start of this. So what's changed? Well, possibly because the officers considered viability information that was provided in an outline draft form by the developer to her, but she chose not to publish it deliberately and not as per the SODC guidelines to ask for a formal viability report to be provided and published. In these emails the officer sent to the developer, the officer noted that the houses were too far up the slope and should be removed. Policy 08 in the plan says that the houses should not be visible over the ridge. And I'm pleased to see the officers say, well, they might be visible over the ridge. There might be a glimpse, but you won't see it if you're driving fast in a car. Show me the bit in the NPPF that says that's the test.
It's your time, sorry.
Sorry, it's a give me a warning.
Yeah. It's a total of five minutes, so that's your time. Committee, any questions for the two objectors? No, I see. Oh, yes, one, Councillor Rob.
Thank you. I do have a question about mix, and we often talk about mix on this committee. Could you talk me through the housing mix requirements from the neighbourhood plan, which are obviously specific to Goring?
I can't quote them off the top of my head. I'm sure Catherine probably has them to hand. But there was, so we were looking for 40% affordable housing, predominantly at smaller housing, 1, 2 and 3 bedroom houses, and a mix of smaller and larger houses, mostly smaller houses in the market housing. Now, as Catherine points out, it does meet on the affordable housing. It does meet the spec,
But not on the market housing that it's going to be.
There are no 1 bed houses.
Thank you for that.
It is focused on making money for the site.
I'll follow on that.
As far as I can see.
Thank you.
Councillor Sadler, do you have a question?
No, I've withdrawn.
No,
I think you answered what I was going to.
Any further questions? No, so thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we'll move on to Max McCadden. It's from the agent. Mr. McCadden, you have 5 minutes to start if you want to speak.
Hello, my name is Matthew McCadden. I'm the director and owner of McCadden Homes who have made this application.
My name's Dawn Brody. I'm the planning agent who works for Savills. and
I
is
haven't
here
got
to assist with-
I haven't got a application from you to speak.
I'm not proposing to speak. It was just to assist with answering any questions
Okay.
if required.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today at the committee. I'd like to particularly thank the council officers and the parish council for working collaboratively to reach this scheme, which has been recommended for approval. The application relates to a site allocated as part of the Goring neighbourhood plan, identified for 46 dwellings. The application, as proposed, is 44 dwellings, net 43. Extensive discussions have taken place with the officers to ensure that these proposals align with the neighbourhood plan and local plan. As set out in the officer's report, the proposed development, as amended, complies with the relevant criteria. In recognition of the sensitive nature of the site, landscape proposals have been developed which provide for trees throughout the development, reflecting the tree character of Goring, where houses are interspersed with trees. A landscaping belt has been provided at the northern extent of the site to provide containment to the development and the outer limits of Goring, which is a feature of the settlement. I would quickly just touch on the scheme benefits. 44 dwellings contributing to local housing requirements. 17 affordable dwellings, which is a mix of social rent, first homes, affordable rent, and shared ownership. 35 of the properties, 80%, are 1, 2, or 3 bedroom properties. There is provision of a play park for use by the wider community, as well as additional open space Provision of a connection between Wallingford Road and Spring Hill Road through the application site, providing an alternative to the substandard footpath along Wallingford Road. These include flat landing spots to help traverse the slope and a raised table and crossing at Spring Hill Road. That's the cycle and pedestrian access that has been referred to in the report. We're making contributions to the local bus services, improvements to the bus stop on the southbound bus stop of Wallingford Road, as you heard mentioned before, and a significant contribution to local education. We as the applicant have worked very hard with the officers to provide a development which minimises its impact on the wider area and meets the technical and environmental requirements set out in the local plan and in the neighbourhood plan. This has been a long and complex process, and we have very much been appreciative of the work done by Catherine and working with the neighbourhood plan group and other parish councils. It's a truly collaborative piece of work. The slope of the site cannot be ignored, and it has made the north to south routes challenging. Every opportunity has been taken to minimise steeper gradients as far as possible, whilst not resulting in such significant land level changes which could concern visually. Lighting proposals will be controlled through condition to ensure that any light spill is minimised. We welcome the officer's comprehensive report and considered recommendation, and would ask members to support the proposal. If we have a positive recommendation, we intend to start on site in summer 2025, with the housing being delivered in 2027, contributing to the housing trajectory.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. Looking now, see the committee have any questions for you. Councillor Roberts?
I'm fine.
No, I'm gonna hold his head. I see none. No, I think we've got all the information we need. Also, thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Next person on my list is Councillor Maggie Filifona Rivers. Maggie, I see
Hi.
you there.
I am
Hi.
here.
You're there. I failed to talk with you this afternoon, so I don't know which way you're going to go. Well, I think like the others, Maggie, you have 5 minutes starting from when you start talking.
I won't use all my 5 minutes and won't repeat what I will try not to repeat what has already been said. But this has been not just a complex journey, but I think quite a tortured one, probably starting with the neighbourhood plan. As Mike has identified, Goring is just very constrained when it comes to finding major sites, and this is a really good case in point. The neighbourhood plan, though obviously it was largely supported, it was less supported than most neighbourhood plans, so this probably should be noted. I also really want to thank Catherine. I know she's been working very collaboratively with residents and the parish council and the developer, and each iteration of this planning application has got better, and a lot of the concerns have been taken on board. But it probably has to be reiterated that we still have quite a few objections from real heavyweights, the Children's Conservation Board, North Wessex Downs, County Council. There's some concerns from the landscape officer as well. And it all seems to me to hinge on these top 4 houses at the top of the hill. And so my kind of judgment is that perhaps we have too many, and had we not had those, we would be at a really a much more acceptable scheme. So I guess the question for the planning committee, and I appreciate it's not an easy one, is this the best that we can do, given that the previous two, the 3 iterations we have progressively got better. And just to say that this is an allocated site, and I think from what I'm hearing from residents is that they either support or at least accept that that site will be developed, and really the intention is to make it as good as it possibly can. And should this planning application be approved, I think a construction management plan that has mentioned before is really necessary. This is not just the largest site for the neighbourhood plan, but it's probably one of the largest Goring has seen in many years. So it will be really disruptive. Spring Hill is a lovely road with many families and children, and I think it is so important to make sure that no vehicles access the site via Spring Hill, and I think that's really key for me. I'll stop there.
All from you. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Megan. Committee, have we got any questions for the councillor? I see none, so thanks very much, Maggie, for your presentation. Okay, that's the speakers. We'll now go back to the planning officer, and I'm sure there are loads of questions for the planning officer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Catherine. I had a question about mix, and I see that we've got the breakdown between the market and the affordable, but I wonder how that overlays with the Goring Parish Council, the Goring Neighbourhood Plan, and what they identified as their housing need in the mix that they wanted to see. Because obviously in the market, what we've got here doesn't align with the SHMA. But I guess it's neighbourhood plan that's more relevant.
So in the actual policy itself, 0.08, it requires a minimum of 35 dwellings to be 1, 2 and 3 bed, which is met on this particular site because there are 38.
Yeah.
And then going back to policy H11 and actually looking at those percentages. So the strategic housing market assessment suggests 5.7% one bedroom market. Just doing a quick calculation, that comes out at 1.5 dwellings for this site. So we're not talking, a huge number.
Loss, it's a loss of 1.5 one bed houses. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that the percentages shown are largely in accordance with the SHMA, and I don't want to go into interrogating the SHMA too much. With officers are satisfied with how closely it does align.
I guess the one area where there is quite a noticeable difference is in the 4+ bed category, where the SHMA requires 24.2% and we've got 37% here. So it's top heavy at the larger end, isn't it? Thanks.
Councillor Gordon-Green.
Thank you, Chair. Can I check? So it's not only top heavy with regards to the housing mix, but is it top heavy with regards to sightlines over the ridge? That's one query, because that was a possible discrepancy in the report, possibly. And the other is just to check with regards to the human rights and the disability element. Has that genuinely been satisfied, do we think, with the mitigation of moving houses down?
So I'll come to the last one first. We have to follow the public sector duty, which is referred to in the report. That just requires us to consider the Equality Act and the implications for the protected characteristics, which we are as a council entitled to consider it, and then decide that some characteristics will be disadvantaged, but to go ahead anyway. I think I'm not a lawyer, but the public sector duty is the part that we are duty bound to consider, rather than the actual conclusion that we come to. It's that we've gone through the process and we have considered it. So I think that's, yes, for the committee to decide. And the other question was about sightlines. So I think there's some confusion. The explanation plan requires the sightlines no breaking from the crest of the hill when viewed from the north from a particular area. So you're looking up. I think this was shown on one of the other plans. So the crest of the hill as you're looking up will actually obscure. I mean, you can't see the ridge from that particular area, but I think you actually look at the cross sections, it is slightly higher. I think that's where the confusion is. I
Okay.
can provide the plan. if you'd like.
Could you go over that, the regard for the levels? Can you just go over that again, because I didn't quite follow it all. So what were the objections that the highways have got? I was trying to find it in here, I can't find it now.
So they said that it won't comply with the Equality Act 2010. I think possibly that's a bit of a simplistic take on it. What they actually mean is there's the inclusive mobility guidance, which I've referred to, is the one that sets out 1 in 20 as guidance. And that's sort of the best practice for meeting the Equality Act. It's not actually set out in the Act itself what the gradients are required to be. Yes.
3.3, Chairman.
Sorry,
3.3.
I didn't see 3.3. Oh, report 3.3.
If I carry on that question.
This is because the county council say it's not compliant. So that doesn't say doesn't meet the guidance, it just says not compliant. So they're saying it doesn't meet, it doesn't do it.
We are factually reporting what they said in their comments.
They've said it's not compliant.
Yeah.
However, from my point of view, they've been consulted 4 times already. And this is the last time they've come forward with this argument. It's the first time they've come forward with this argument, having been consulted 3 times already. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yes, could Catherine just come back with a little bit more information on that, David? If that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So the inclusive mobility document was updated in 2021 to reflect the Equality Act, but there was a previous iteration which had the exact same guidance, the exact same gradients in. I think it was from recollection, it was around when that guidance came out that OCC started requiring developments to meet this 1 in 20. Obviously, this application had already been allocated. The application was already in by that point, and it was sort of halfway through that they made this requirement. And I looked back through their comments on the neighbourhood plan, and as far as I could see, they hadn't raised gradients as an issue.
During the neighbourhood plan process.
And the neighbourhood plan process,
Yeah,
we established in the parish council. Yeah. That's a bit much for them to put in that last minute and a reinterpretation of what the rules say. Yeah. Councillor Arlett, you got a question?
Yeah, Catherine, can I just clarify what you did say, or it sounded to me that if the gradients stayed as they were, the county council wouldn't adopt the roads. So does that mean that they would become private roads?
I think the intention is for them to become private roads. I think they also said that they wouldn't sign a private street agreement, but my understanding is that there is a way around this, I think perhaps involving indemnity. It's just more costly. So that was my understanding.
As what are the implications for future residents of that? For example, particularly the residents of the 17 affordable houses, if we've got a private road that they are collectively responsible for maintaining.
I think that would probably be through either a management company or
The registered provider that
Would
effectively
pick up the tab for that.
effectively, I mean, obviously, you don't get into the
No.
mechanics of that, but essentially the registered provider would take the site on being aware of its characteristics.
Yeah.
And then administer
Okay, so
Sort of
we're not
arrangements,
all to those
but
residents.
wouldn't necessarily directly put to those.
Okay.
Councillor Creed. Lord Creed. Right.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to that, just clarifying that, so if OCC will not adopt under section 38, is it, if it wasn't for those 4 houses, would they adopt the rest of the roads? Question. And then I really need clarification about the water element, because there's Grampian style conditions, but under 7.106, they essentially, this is where I need clarification because I might have got it wrong. They're saying that, the report says that it's unlikely that OCC will accept houses draining into the sub-base of the proposed highways if the highways are to be offered under adoption, section 38. So can I get some clarification about that? Because it's a very delicate ecosystem. And is that a way to avoid? It's a question. Please, can I have clarification?
So section 38 adoption. Not all developments do it. They don't have to. It's not an absolute requirement. If they've lost the top 4 units, would OCC accept it? I think not, because the issues for them seems to be the gradients across the whole site. So that, I guess, would address the issue about the sub-base and not adopting the road. You're right, though, the sort of water is particularly an issue here because it's a source protection zone. So that's why we've got additional conditions and further information that's required to make sure that the drainage is suitable for such an area. I think that answers your questions.
Another question, waste management from the district council. It says in here, please replan it. They're not happy that the vehicles can actually collect from what the streets as it's designed, I suppose. Is that a condition, or is that?
That was an earlier iteration. It's all been checked by the highways officer at great length, all the refuse tracking and such like. So I think that's their latest comment. I don't think.
Well, this is on the third page of your report. So.
Yes, that's the latest comment from the waste officer. But
so it's been sorted.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Need to be clear on that. Councillor Arlett.
Yeah, just on one of the conditions, on condition 27, but it's got no garage conversion to accommodation. What's the chance of keeping that in place? Just about anybody these days is knocking garages into accommodation.
If by removing the permitted development rights, they would require planning permission to do that. So then,
But that's what I'm saying. But you've got it as a condition. But can we? Is it a firm decision where if an application came forward to a planning committee, we could refuse it because it's a condition in here?
You'd have to consider at the time, based on the highways officer's advice, on whether it's needed or not.
I think if I might come in, Chair, what I would say is Ken will know that, I will know that we look at each case on its merits at the time when it's submitted. But I think on this particular development, there'd be very good reason to try and uphold that condition firmly, because obviously there are constraints in with the gradients on where there is suitable parking. So I think there is a particular need to apply it, and there's a need for us to ensure that it's adhered to. It doesn't stop somebody making an application, and then, as I say, we would have to assess it as at that time. But I think it's appropriate to apply here. And obviously, on a new development, the expectation would be that we would seek to ensure that it appropriate parking continues to be provided and not support any reduction, because obviously that would lead on to other issues.
It's a very difficult one. There is not a strange recommendation, but an unusual recommendation at the end of this meeting, at the end of this report. I don't know if you're aware of that, which is not to approve or disapprove of it, but to actually pass it to myself and the planning officer to approve it. Is that right?
I think the wording, Chair, is to reassure you, it's the committee's decision. But once we have completed, in the event the members submit a recommendation, then we go on to finalise the section 106 of the ordinance, and it's that we bring to you.
It's the 106 which this in fact doesn't pass it. It's on the pass. It's subject to successful 106 agreements.
So apologies that the word approve. So be delegated for head of planning and chair of, so planning should be delegated for approval.
Yes, so
Should be,
yeah.
would have made it clearer.
So the recommendation is for approval, subject to the planning officer and themselves.
And those 28 conditions.
And the conditions being discharged or amended. Right, have we run out of questions or not?
No.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'll go to Catherine. So.
I just wonder whether there should be further conversations with the county council because of this. I mean, the road situation isn't very satisfactory, and their objection has sort of come a bit late in this very lengthy process. I mean, could they be invited to have another look at it? Whether or not, you know, I mean, it just seems a bit strange that they've come up with this view quite late in this rather lengthy process. And I mean, I think it would be, you know, better for the development if it wasn't left to fend for itself and looking after its roads.
No, I agree. And I did go back, kind of been back to them several times. And most recently they've said, you know, we uphold our objection and we would be willing to support that at appeal.
I think if we had a proposal for acceptance or approval, we could put that as a condition in there and say, but can you go and talk to the county council again?
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to hold it up for the sake of that,
Yeah.
But we can actually ask that to happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think I would be satisfied with that.
So I think, you know, they've made their position clear. We get to a point as the determining authority where we have to weigh up all the comments that we received and decide which side of the fence we come down on. We recognise that this was an allocated site, that there were constraints that we had to work within. My own opinion is the county's objection came in relatively late in the day. It was informed by more up-to-date guidance. They reserve their right, obviously, to make their comments as up-to-date and reflect the latest position. But we do have some examples in the district of sites with gradients. We're not totally unfamiliar with working with them. And we came to a position where we feel overall this scheme is acceptable, and we're obviously recommending it for approval to you. But I think, you know, we would have continued to just have the county council saying, from their point of view, they maintain their objection. From our point of view, we find it acceptable, and we get to a point where we've worked as hard as we can, but we have to make a recommendation.
I'm with you, yeah. But you're recognising that there's more work to do on regard the county council's objections. Councillor Gordon Creed, you have another question.
One last question. I haven't seen anything in here about the BNG. I assume that's dealt with in the landscapes and landscape management, etc. I couldn't find anything to do with that, but I assume it's been covered because it has to be covered. So my one question is there any specification with, given how important, if we were so minded to approve this application, how important the tree coverage and the tree canopies and tree heights are, that can be part of the discussion in terms of the landscape management plan, that the trees going in are not tiny twigs. They're going to take 30 years to grow. That's one request. And the other, and this may or may not be allowed, but this is very
we asked a question, not
well, this is a question. Is this allowed to be conditioned, if you like, that from those pictures of where the bungalow is going to be destroyed, that looks like landscape that hasn't been disturbed in a very long time. Please, could there be a condition to check wildlife, not just bats but you know, hibernating hedgehogs and things as well, before the developer goes in and raises that to, you know, clears that. Is that possible to put in there? If not, take notes.
So I'll start with BNG. That only came in applications submitted after for majors. It was January this year that we have to meet the 10% BNG under the Environment Act. And this was submitted before that. It doesn't have to meet those requirements. It just needs to meet the requirements in the local plan for a net gain, which the council psychologist is satisfied that it does. And there is a section of ecology and biodiversity in the report. The sort of in terms of the garden and the ecology there, it's in the red line, so it would have been assessed. But given the length of time that this application has gone on for, I can see that perhaps there would be need for a walkover survey or some sort of update. So I think that could probably be a condition.
Okay, well, we've finished with question, I hope. Right, so I'm looking for a proposal then, please. Councillor Arnold.
Yeah, I propose officer's recommendation, Chairman. You want me to tell you one?
Thank you. I'll just look for a seconder first. Have a seconder. Yeah, well done. Thank you for Councillor Draghetti. Right, so come back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard all the debate. I would take issue with Councillor Mike Stairs. I chaired the Henley and Harpston neighbourhood plan. We never took the least of the worst sites. I would say we took the best that was available, and I wouldn't use that kind of term to the game. If they do a review of their neighbourhood plan, which Henley just
I'm sure no good with that. Yeah.
at the moment. But I think there comes a time, and that being a former builder, I think what we've seen here, it's been reduced, and there must come a time when I look at all the payments that the developer's going to have to pay, when I would probably question it's coming to the stage, is it viable? Especially with all these conditions that are in place. I think the builder's done a pretty good job on the site was available. If this would have been a flat site, I don't think we'd be sitting here today discussing this application. It's unfortunate. It's in the neighbourhood plan, and I think we have to accept that. People talk about ridge heights and this, so I can see a bit of a ridge height, blah, blah, blah. And, drive out there and look around, you'll see ridge heights over trees everywhere, and it's a fact of life. Builders build, and they will build as best they can. Yeah, look, we could pick out 3 or 4 items here for refusal, but I think we should look at this. It's in the neighbourhood plan. I think the application is the best that's available. I don't believe on that site you're going to get a better plan unless you just build maybe 1 or 2 houses. In that case, that's no good for man nor beast. It gives us 17 affordable houses, which is what we're all after. And to be honest, Chairman, I think it's a very good application that the builders come up with.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. Councillor Dragon, you wish to speak now? Or
yeah, well, I'll just speak now. I think, as Ken pointed out, if it comes, it's come through from the neighbourhood plan, and that's a big thing. Goring, like other unsuitable settlements, was imposed, has had a number of houses imposed on it, and it's got to accommodate them, and everywhere's a lot of compromises here. I think they've done the best they can. As far as ridge heights being visible in the countryside, there are many worse things that have gone on in the countryside, in the open downland around Goring, that's much more damaging, they don't actually have any public benefits or contribution. So I think you just sort of take some of these the negative aspects of this application on the chin and just accept it because the negative aspects don't outweigh positive ones.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as those of us who were around at the time will remember, Goring was required to provide an additional 15% growth in its housing stock as part of the local plan. And so they embarked on the neighbourhood plan, and they went through a very painful process to try and find sites because they are washed over by the AONB, beg your pardon, the National Landscape. And they managed to actually get that number that they were required to build down because of the severe constraints that they had. So what they've ended up with, and as Mike said, you know, it's the least worst option. So that's what it's not. Landscape harm, in terms of landscape harm, and that is what the inspector said about these sites. In terms of the landscape harm, these were the least worst options. The plan that was then consulted on, it was approved by the village by a much narrower margin than they normally are approved, because these are not good sites when it comes down to it. But it's been approved by, that plan was approved by an inspector. It's been endorsed by the community. Do I love it? No, I do not love it. Is it great to have steep slopes that are unacceptable to Oxfordshire County Council? No, it's not. But they came in so late in this process. There's simply no way around it. The mix, it's providing a good deal of affordable housing, and that's exactly what Goring wants. It's as close to a decent mix as we're going to get, I think, in a very expensive area like this. So I don't love this, but I think this is as good as it's going to get. And I heard somebody say tonight, is this the best it can be? Well, that's not what we're required to decide. What we're required to decide tonight is this acceptable in planning terms? Do the benefits, and this is planning, outweigh the planning harm? And I think the officer's report is pretty detailed, and I think it makes it clear that this is acceptable in planning terms. We don't need to love every aspect of it. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's not what we're required to do here tonight. So I would support the recommendation.
Well, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sadler, anyway.
Yeah, just to say, really, it was a very long report and a massively long read. Well done, Catherine, because it's there's an awful lot in it. But yeah, I felt very conflicted by the whole process. There's so much there. There is that 40% affordable, which is good. On the flip side, there's these market homes as well. It's a bit disappointed to see that the 4-bedroom ones, despite that was at the higher end, if I recall, from that list of things. And yeah, you've got the concern about the slopes, you're concerned about the views, concerned about vehicles accessing, and then of course that access issue as well, which I'm glad to say, because Catherine sort of teased that out, and I think just to it's good that we can sort of like say yes, it's something that you need to go back to Oxfordshire County Council and sort of finalise and get right. I think that's the thing that would have tipped it for me, but I think I'm feeling better about it.
Councillor Godfrey.
Brief. I'm absolutely minded to go with officer recommendation on this, but my one red flag is a bit high of a word, but given the Thames Water's historic non-objection to everything to do with water, and then the Environment Agency jumping in and saying, excuse me. So my one red flag on this is to do with protection of that very delicate environment with regards to affecting the groundwater. I don't see how this can't affect the delicate ecosystem around there just by the nature of building. So I know that those in theory protections are in place, but that's my only thing to be noted is Thames Water really on it with regards to not objecting. That's it. Yeah, but otherwise I appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, is that everyone's who wants to speak has spoken? So I'll go back to Councillor Roberts.
So just to confirm, there were 3 additional conditions that Catherine
Yes,
recommended that weren't detailed in the report. So we would be asking the proposal motion to support those conditions. Catherine will give us the summary.
So it's one about the control crossing at Wallingford Road.
Yeah.
One about removing permitted development rights for units 1 to 4 for Class C alteration of the roof.
So no deluxe.
To be expanded upon. That we looked into it, and then there was additional one for over surveys, particularly for the whole site.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'll do that. Thanks, Jen.
My neck and the rest.
Your second is happy, he's happy, yeah. Do you want to sum up?
No, but
Is there anything to say?
I think basically it's all been said. There was concern, but there's more. There's more in this report to support a permission, and I think Councillor Rob just mentioned, you know, if it's acceptable in planning terms, and I think, you know, that's what we have to look at the end of the day. And yeah, that's all, Chairman.
Okay, just before we go to the votes, I want to say quite a weighty report, and Catherine, I think, has done a superb job on that, so I say. Yeah, well, thanks for the report, because it's.
We haven't voted yet, Chairman.
We haven't voted yet. But, I mean, everybody said that, haven't we? Well, it's matter. She's still done a good report. I think we agree with you. That's the different matter. We'll go for the vote. All those in favour of the proposal, which is good for approval, please show. Thank you, committee. That is unanimous. All right. So thank you. Ken, you have to leave us.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to have a 2-minute break.
Yeah, well done.
Okay.
24S 0072, Watlington Yard, Brickwell Road, Watlington. The planning officer is Paul Lucas. Paul, I see you there. Well done.
Thank you,
Please
Chair.
take us through, please. Yeah, take us through.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a storage building on an existing employment site about 140 metres from the southern edge of Watlington. Your officers consider that the principle of employment development in this location is supported by local plan policies EMP3 and EMP10 and neighbourhood plan policy P7, as discussed at paragraphs 7.2 to 7.3 of the report. As outlined in paragraphs 7.4 to 7.7 of the report, your officers consider that the proposed siting, scale form and detailing of the proposed development and the retention of established boundary foliage would be sufficiently in keeping with its immediate surroundings and would conserve the setting of the nearby Chilterns National Landscape. Your officers consider that the relationship between the proposed building and its closest residential neighbours would be acceptable in respect of light, outlook and privacy, as covered in paragraphs 7.8 to 7.9 of the report. The local highway authority considers that the proposal would result in an increased risk to highway safety through use of an access with substandard visibility. However, the planning permission for the established storage or distribution use does not contain any planning conditions restricting the hours of operation and the frequency and nature of vehicular movements. In contrast, the applicant has provided a transport technical note which sets out that the building site would operate within the following parameters. The working hours of the site from 9 till 3 p.m, a total of two deliveries collections to the site per day. Vehicle trips to or from the site will be undertaken by either a 7.1 metre long rigid vehicle or a transit type van type vehicle, and no customer visits. Officers consider that the above parameters could be secured for a planning condition requiring compliance with the details as set out in the transport note. Officers are of the view that this would meet the 6 test for imposition of planning conditions, particularly in terms of being necessary, reasonable and enforceable. With this planning condition in place, officers disagree with OCC and are of the opinion that the proposed development will result in a reduction in vehicle movements compared with the unrestricted movements allowed by the existing situation, resulting in a positive impact on the local highway network. Therefore, officers consider that the proposal would comply with local plan policy Trans 5 and neighbourhood plan policy P2. Matters related to ecology, external lighting, drainage, tree and hedge protection, landscaping and carbon reduction could be dealt with through the recommended conditions to the satisfaction of the relevant specialist officers. Your officers consider the application would comply with the relevant development plan policies, and on that basis it is recommended that planning permission is granted.
Thank you, Paul. Stay with us while we hear from the agent, and then I'll come back to you. Right, only one speaker, Mr. Plumley, is it?
Yes,
Oh, it's virtual, sorry. Yeah. Okay, you have 5 minutes when you start speaking. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. I am the Town Planner at Art Planning Associates and the agent for this planning application. This application represents an opportunity for the council to bring a commercial site back into productive use at White House Farm, Watlington. White House Farm is a small industrial estate comprising a number of workshops. Tenants include furniture maker, joiners, carpenters and furnace repair engineers. The application site was previously used as an oil storage depot by Certus Energy, and this was a continuous use for 57 years, with planning permission originally being approved in 1964. The oil tanks were dismantled and removed, and the site cleaned in respect of contaminants in 2021. The site was later sold to our client. Our client owns the freehold of the site and seeks planning permission for a 385 square metre B8 storage and distribution shed for landscaping and all enabling works. The proposal will use the existing access which has served White House Farm safely for over 6 years. The storage shed is to be used by the client for the storage of roofing shingles on behalf of Kate Power Products UK Limited. This is the applicant's trading name, who are based in Amersham. Currently, the roof shingles are stored on site in the open air on pallets and therefore subject to damage from elements and also at risk of theft. No employees will be based on site, with workers only visiting when collecting or delivering roof tiles. The building will be positioned along the site's northeastern and southeastern boundary and be screened from view by existing hedge, trees and existing commercial units that surround it. The building will comprise a high bay structure with a pitched roof, 4.5 metres to eaves height, 6 metres to ridge height. The building is a rectangular in layout with a width of 11 metres and a length of 35 metres. There are no technical objections to the scheme from consultees other than from Oxfordshire Highways. The Highway Authority is concerned the existing vehicular access has substandard visibility displays and result in an increased risk to highway safety. We're somewhat surprised by this rejection, given the application site and its access has been operational since 1964, and that other occupants at the White House farm also utilised the highway's access. To our knowledge, the access has been operating safely for all this time. As set out within the planning application, we've shown the proposal will in fact reduce traffic movements when compared to the previous use as an oil storage depot. With respect to the highways objection, we consider a bit of common sense is required here. Over the last 9 months, both the applicant and your officers have tried and failed to overturn the highway objection, and this is despite the submission of additional supporting documents to appease the highway officers' concerns. We've also responded to the consultation on the proposed Watlington Relief Road and the associated changes to the wider local highway network. This includes canvassing for the reduced speed limit within Watlington to be extended further along Brightwell Road to outside the White House farm. This effort has all been to no avail. To overcome the objection, we've been collaborating with the officers and agreed the following set of parameters. The working hours of the site restricted to 9 AM to 3 PM, a total of 2 deliveries collection to the site per day, vehicle trips to or from the site to be undertaken by a 6.1 metre rigid vehicle or transit van type vehicle, and no customer visits. These parameters are set out fully within the transport technical note which accompanies the application. Whilst it's our preference to see no restrictions put in place, we agree to these being secured via a planning condition for the sake of securing a favourable planning permission. This is to ensure the proposed development results in a reduction in vehicle movements compared with the unrestricted movements allowed by the current use, and therefore resulting in a positive impact on highway safety. It is noted these restrictions relate only to the applicant's operations and not other occupants of White House Farm who will continue to use the access unheeded. We respectfully request that the Planning Committee approve this planning application this evening and happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Committee, are there any questions? No, so thank you very much, Mr. Tramley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to the officer. We'll go back to Paul. Because you got any questions for Paul? Councillor Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paul. I'm just interested, firstly, how on earth do you enforce these conditions around working hours, 2 deliveries per day, transit vehicle, no customer visits? And secondly, does Highways know about the fact that the applicant has agreed to these parameters being conditional?
Yes, the answer is yes, they do know about it. We raised these matters with Highways to see if they would also withdraw their objection if such a condition was imposed, and they disagreed. They refused to withdraw their objection. So ultimately the decision is ours, or will be the committee's, as to whether planning permission should be granted. I mean, in terms of monitoring, I mean, if we became aware of an objection, I mean, the people in prime position to see would be the occupier of White House Farm, right next to the entrance, so they would easily be able to take photographic evidence and compile log sheets if necessary, and then that could lead to potentially planning enforcement getting involved and carrying out their own monitoring at the key times. So we would be able to follow it up. So for that reason, we consider it meets such a condition would meet the 6 tests.
Thanks, Paul. A quick follow-up question, if that's right. At the moment, just to clarify, at the moment, the site operates in an unconstrained way in terms of traffic movements. At the moment, there's no restrictions whatsoever on types of vehicles, operating hours, number of deliveries. None of those restrictions exist at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. The original permission of 60 didn't contain any restriction on those, and that's what relates to this site. And as I understand it, there aren't no similar restrictions on any of the other occupiers or users of the access.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sadler.
Just on the on that intensification use of the access and the risk to highway safety and so forth. The agent mentioned that there was that they looked into reducing the speed limit for that area and so forth, and to no avail. Why would that be? Because I mean, if they cited a risk, I would have thought that highways would have said, well, actually, yes, we could reduce that to 40 miles an hour, for example.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to comment on that because it's obviously not directly related to the planning application process. It's a separate sort of matter as to where the county council decide to put their speed limits. There was a consultation process. The applicant made observations. I'm not quite sure where that process, how far that process has got, whether that's still ongoing. But it wasn't the fact that they made representations in that process wasn't a factor for the highway liaison officer to come to a different conclusion on this application.
Councillor Gordon-Creed.
Also, Paul, can I clarify, following on from Councillor Robb's question, that when SODC used it, oil tankers of all sizes and shapes were going in and out unrestricted, and the residents of White House were not raising objections, correct?
Well, what I can say to that, I mean, I don't know firsthand, but what they were using, but they had the opportunity to use whatever size vehicles they wanted. There was no restriction on it. I mean, I'm not aware. I haven't looked into whether there were objections to that. Obviously, it was running from the 1960s, so it was over a long period of time. So it's not something I've got the information to hand on.
Okay, Catherine.
Well, it's not really a question, but I do think some serious questions about Oxfordshire highways are coming up throughout this evening. I think certainly we need to ask ourselves questions about what they're up to. But that's not really a question.
That's not. I think we all feel that same way.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, the one question, Paul. I think you probably already know the answer, but why don't they just don't increase the vision space?
Well, the issue there is that the applicant doesn't have control over it because it goes across third party land. I mean, the splays for a 50-mile-an-hour road, you need 160-metre splays, and it's 30 metres to the left and 60 metres to the right. So it is some way short of the current standard. And to get 160 metres, you're going well into adjacent farmland on one side and across the residential property on the other. So if you don't have control over that, you can't it can't be secured.
They don't own the land, so you can't.
Yeah, it can't be secured. So the landowner could just obstruct it.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's all the questions we've got. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. Okay.
I had one more, Chair.
Sorry.
I had one more.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Can you come back?
Is you still there?
He's
Sorry,
back.
Paul. I did have a
Okay.
quick question. Thank you. I did have a quick question about external lighting. In particular, mindful of impact on the residents of White House Farm. You talk about bats within the external lighting condition. I can see that the potential for large industrial type lighting. Well, I suppose that if it's bad for bats, it's bad for White House Farm, isn't it? So I just was mindful of the fact that external lighting could be insensitive to White House Farm as well.
Yeah, yes. I mean, the condition would also pick up that as well. I mean, we can consult with environmental protection. We usually do when external lighting is involved. Ostensibly, the condition has come from the ecologist. We did consult with environmental health. They didn't recommend a lighting condition, but we've got it there, and so there'll be that a scheme needs to come forward, and we can take a look at it.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're finished now. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Paul. Okay. I'm looking for a proposal. Councillor Gordon-Creed.
I propose we go with officer
Officer
recommendation.
recommendation. Is that seconded? Yeah. I think. Yeah. Do you wish to speak? Anybody wish to speak?
I would only reiterate the external lighting condition, less so.
It's already there.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else wish to speak? We just go to a vote, shall we then? Yeah, all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's easy. Two fingers to me.
Council.
It's the county council. Well, it's not the county council, is it? It's the council officer. It just seems to be applying rules that shouldn't be applied because it's existing access. Right, we'll move on to Golden, P23 S2544, and the planning officer is Sharon, who I see is sitting next to us. Sharon, would you like to take us through this, please?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to make a correction to the report. The neighbour comment in support of the application at the end of page 120 relates to a different application and should be removed. And thank you to the parish council for picking that up.
Is that neighbour comments 1?
Yes, neighbour comments 1. The application seek planning permission and listed building consent for the extension and conversion of this barn to a 3-bed dwelling. The planning application also includes a detached 3-bay outbuilding housing a double garage and store on the ground floor and a studio storage area above. The barn is a curtilage listed building to Courthouse Farm, which lies to the north. It lies in the Toothbalden Conservation Area, which is hatched green on the plan before you, and is within the Oxford Green Belt. The applications are referred to committee because the parish council have objected to the size of the garage, which they consider to be too large for the plot, encroaching into the green belt and being out of character with other buildings. The parish council also support the neighbour concerns about loss of privacy. The conversion of the barn is acceptable in terms of our housing policy and Greenbelt and South Oxfordshire local plan policies also allow for limited amounts of infilling within the villages. The site is within the settlement of Toothbalden and is surrounded by other buildings, and the provision of the new garage building is not inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. Parish Council and the neighbour are concerned about the size of the outbuilding. I'm just going to point the outbuilding out to you on the plan in front. This building here. So the parish council and the neighbour are concerned about the size of the outbuilding and the relationship with the neighbour's garden, which is along here. The outbuilding lies to the north of the neighbour. Sorry, the orientation on this plan is confusing, but north is down to the bottom of the page. Right. So it's the garage is to the north of the neighbour's garden and will not block sunlight to the garden. It is located some 10 metres from the side wall of number 12. Neighbour privacy has been protected by ensuring that any windows in side elevations with the potential to overlook the garden of number 12 are obscure glazed. I'll just run through some photographs so that you can see the barn and the neighbour relationship. This is the entrance into the site and the barn is immediately before you. Number 13 Toothbalden is to the right. Okay, all right. And again, another photograph of the front of the barn and the relationship with number 13. This is towards the rear of the site, and the barn is at the front of the photograph here with number 12, the affected neighbour, just behind. This little outbuilding here is within the ownership of number 12 Toothbalden. The garage outbuilding would be in this location here and involves the removal of the apple tree, which you can see before you.
Sharon, sorry, just for clarity, if you could go back, because I think your mouse is in a weird place. The garage is going to be tucked in where, just
here, yes.
At the bottom of the screen.
It's at the top. No, sorry, not here. No, the garage will be where this apple tree is in the, sorry.
Yes, yes,
Just here.
okay.
And
In that little dog leg there. Okay,
yes,
yeah.
and it will involve the removal of this tree and this hedge. And then this is the garden to the barn, and that's the hedge that would be removed just here. So planning permission and listed building consent have already been granted for a similar barn conversion. The barn conversion element of this scheme is the same. The only difference between the two schemes is the size of the outbuilding. The approved planning permission provides for a smaller single-storey storage building, and I've got a plan of that here, and I'll just focus in on the store building that has permission is in the same location as the proposed garage for this one, but a much smaller building, single story with some cycle storage within. But the applications are recommended. We've got two applications before us, a planning permission and a listed building consent application.
Thank you, Sharon. Yes, you're quite right. There are two applications, but we will be voting on them separately. But I propose to take all the discussions on them at the same time. So I have two speakers. Harold Twinder is, sorry, Andy Spate is my first one, who's from Tewkesbury and Parish Council.
Good evening. I'm
Good evening.
Andy Spate, Vice Chair of Baldwin Parish Council.
And you have 5 minutes.
Given the recent approval for the barn conversion on this site, the committee is being asked to consider only the addition of the new large two-storey double garage with additional storage and first floor accommodation to be constructed in a listed curtilage within the conservation area and the green belt. The Parish Council supported the conversion of the existing listed barn on an already approved application, including a small shed. We object to this application as we believe the proposed large detached garage outbuilding constitutes inappropriate development in a very special location. We recognise the Heritage Officer's advice on impact of the works to the listed barn on the conservation area and green belt as causing less than substantial harm. However, these comments were only given in response to the listed building consent application and relate only to the barn and not to the proposed new build double garage. The officer refers to an internal staircase. However, we believe this is incorrect. The staircase is external, which is unsightly and prejudices the privacy of the neighbour. The proposed garage structure is very large, both in footprint and height, and would occupy a space directly adjacent to the rear neighbours and be visible from the main road, as well as from the listed building. We maintain that the structure as proposed will represent encroachment on the green belt and would harm the conservation area, as well as being potentially damaging to a listed building. Excuse me. The village of Tewkesbury is a rural village, and as such development is restricted to limited infill. Whilst a building in this location could be considered as infill, the definition also states that the scale of the infill should be appropriate to its location. The new building would be almost as large as the barn conversion itself and is not appropriate in its location within a small group of houses in the rural village. We also support the objections and concerns of the residents of number 12, Tewkesbury, over the size and scale of the building and privacy concerns. The proposed structure could easily be converted, later converted to living accommodation, increasing the amount of associated traffic and other impacts on the village. If the committee is minded to grant the application in its current form, we would request that in addition to permitted development restrictions already proposed by the planning officer, a condition is imposed to restrict the building to ancillary storage only and not allow conversion to residential living accommodation, either associated with the existing barn or separate to it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spate. Quincy, has anybody got any questions for him? I see none, so thank you very much for your time. Okay, right, I'll call Carol Strinder. Yeah, Carol has advised me that she has a hearing problem, so if everyone could speak up and look at her when they question, please. Carol, it's all yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Carol Trinder. My husband and I live at number 12 Borden. We're the nearest neighbours to the proposed canal conversion, and I'd like to raise 4 main objections to the proposal. Our first concern is loss of privacy. We're very concerned about the size of the outbuilding. It's a 2-storey structure immediately behind a 2-metre high boundary fence. The outbuilding would be 6 metres high and only 9 metres from the rear of our house, with a window on the upper storey east elevation and an outside staircase on the west elevation. From the outside staircase, there would be direct view into our dining room. The planning officer states that the window should be obscured glass, but there's no mention of the staircase. Secondly, the proposed structure would involve a considerable loss of light for ourselves, as the rear of our house faces north. The planning officer states that the impact from the height of the garage on this window will not be dissimilar to the impact from the existing apple tree and planting on the boundary. A solid structure is clearly significantly different to light coming through trees, which actually shed their leaves in winter when light's at a premium. I'm told I should like to see the light calculations that have been made by the architect on this point. You hadn't been provided with photographs of the view from our side of the fence, so we're unable to judge the impact this will have. We've attached a photo of the site it is now and one with the proposed outbuilding drawn in on it. On previous plans, there was a 1-storey shed or bike store to which we didn't object and did not consider unreasonable, although we pointed out it was a shame to remove the trees as it could have been sited elsewhere. Thirdly, we are unhappy about the removal of the apple tree and the hedge, which are in the conservation area, and are to be removed in order to put the outbuilding on the proposed site. The Bramley apple tree had extensive work about 25 years ago. It has regenerated into a fine tree, still producing apples. The hedge, referred to as a beech in the plans, is actually a hazel. Sadly, it's been neglected and is in need of coppicing, which would give it a whole new lease of life. Hazels can live up for several hundred years if regularly coppiced. It's also a valuable habitat for wildlife, supporting birds, small mammals, moths. Both the apple tree and the hazels are some of the last reminders of Borden being a farming village. Finally, there is a discrepancy in the plans about foul water disposal. There is no main drainage in Borden, and there are no plans for a septic tank disposal for foul water indicated. We don't object to the conversion of the barn, but are very unhappy at the impact the outbuilding will have on us, hence our objection. It's a large site. It should be possible to do the conversion, site the outbuilding elsewhere, and preserve the trees and the environment without having a detrimental impact on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Committee, have we got any questions for Carol Trinder? I see none, so thank you very much for your time. Thank you. And now Ian Mills, who is the supporter. Ian, and you have 5 minutes when you start speaking.
Very good evening to you, Chair and Councillors. Thank you for your time and allow me to speak. My name is Ian Mills. I'm acting as the agent on behalf of the applications for this project before you. It is their desire to undertake this project and move in the conversion barn as a smaller home, selling courthouse after. Courthouse is listed, therefore this barn and any works we propose to do it requires both full planning as well as listed buildings consent. As been mentioned, there's already recently under delegated powers and approval for the conversion of the barn with a smaller outbuilding, which will act as a store, bike store, etc.
The issues, as we've just heard, is regarding both by the neighbour and the parish relates to the provision of this detached garage building. The officer's report is very clear and concise, and it is evident that the officer and the conservation team do not have many concerns, and I quote, "The design will have less than harmful impact." There are some discrepancies on the objections. There are roof lights to the north elevation of the garage building, and these do not look over the adjoining dwelling whatsoever. They're mistaken the proposed PV panels, which are on the south elevation, as roof lights. It is not two-storey. It is in fact a single-storey garage building, and all we're doing is creating usable space in the roof void. I've done this on many, many occasions, not just in South Oxfordshire, but across Buckinghamshire, West Northampton, Staffordshire, and always have had this design accepted and approved. It's a double garage with doors on it. It also has a smaller store area for bikes, for PV panels, for battery backup, and all the ancillary equipment goes with it. The staircase is hidden under the roof. And what it actually allows us to do is create a storage area up in the roof void to be used as store or a home office for the applicants to use as and when they wish. Yes, I appreciate the concern that the neighbour has with this is only single story with room in the roof. Yes, we are removing the tree, and yes, we are removing some hedgerows, but we will put in a much needed landscaping scheme to enhance biodiversity, although the BNG actually is coming in force only April this year, and this application was submitted before that. Regard to the drainage, Thames Water have been in consultation to put mains drainage to suit and serve the whole of the building. If that does not come online before this project is completed, we will put a canal chester in, which will meet with all environmental concerns and meet all legislation that we require to do so. The officer's report is clear and the recommendation is there, and I must commend to you the professionalism of Sharon, the planning officer, and her listed buildings officers team. We have been very proactive in adjusting the design scheme, making sure the needs of the conservation and the listed structure is maintained. And I concur with all of the conditions that they wish to put on the building and on the application. And I trust that you concur with their recommendation and give approval on this one. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Chair, councillors, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mills. Thank you for your time. I see hands going up, so I don't need to ask if you've got any questions.
Happy to answer.
Catherine Fitzgerald.
Could I just have a bit more clarification on this staircase, which seems to be concerning the neighbour? You say it's tucked under the roof yet?
We extend the roof over the double garage and the store and beyond, so actually the staircase is hidden underneath the roof. What this actually does is protects the neighbours. There is no chance of people walking upstairs can see through the roof to the neighbour behind. So extending the staircase out gives and creates the not only protection to the staircase with people using it in terms of wet weather and adverse weather, but also protects and stops any overlooking directly into the neighbour's garden.
Councillor Gordon Green, do you have a question?
That was going to be
Oh, yeah, okay.
my question, because just from this elevation, it looks like it goes up and you can't, it goes nowhere.
Yeah, I think the centre centre drawing there shows it disappearing up into the gable end and the roof area.
Can
It's external.
just ask the actual height? Is that within a one-story height remit?
Through you, Chair, the height of the garage building is 5.9 metres to the ridge.
5.9. What that means, all right. But still with Mr. Mills, though. Yeah.
So do I, Chair, so don't worry.
If no further questions, I'll excuse you. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Could you give me some detail on the listing of this of the barn? How it doesn't look that remarkable. I'm just curious as to why it's been listed.
It is curtilage listed, councillor, in that any building that is within the curtilage of, which is in this instance courthouse, any building within that parameters of that curtilage of that dwelling is deemed to be curtilage listed. Therefore, we have to go through the same process to get the approvals. And Sharon and her colleagues within the conservation team have extensively looked at the details been submitted. We've had site meetings and we've readjusted the scheme to ensure we comply with preservation of what is actually quite a pleasant building.
think ours, is it? Yeah, I was wondering that. I was wondering the same thing because it doesn't look anything significant, does it? That part?
Internally, there are obviously the trusses, there are noted, also there are carpenter's marks on some of the timbers as well. So it has some historic content, albeit it would have been an outbuilding for what was originally the farmstead. There is a debate whether it should be curtilage listed because it should actually, in certain instances, be only part of the farm and not of the house, which was the domestic residence. But in this instance, I think the distinction is it's marginal.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mills. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Just on that point, thank you, Mr. Mills. So it's curtilage listed, the barn is curtilage listed because, I mean, it's no longer within the curtilage of the listed building, is it? It's a separate, the red line area is a separate area in separate ownership.
No, the
Nothing to do with
curtilage of courthouse
Yes.
includes the location of this barn. The red line is the application site,
Yeah.
which is for the conversion of this outbuilding and barn only. Whereas the rest of it is on the site location plan would be a blue edge line, which shows the rest of the land, which is in ownership of the applicant.
And I assume the reason why the garage was positioned in that little, what's that, never each on the eastern side of the area, of the red line area, is because you didn't want to put it nearer to courthouse because that would have a greater impact on the listed building.
That is part of the situation. Plus also it is away from the public domain, the access off of the little lane into the site itself, and be partially hidden by the barn and its extension. Is to diminish the views to the public. Plus also, if I may add, is the materials we're proposing will be in keeping with the barn, which will be a plinth wall and brick with timber cladding, which actually melts away.
And clay tile roof?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Some
Some other ones, sorry.
Oh, one further question, Margaret. I'm just curious about the alignment of this of the garage building, because it would appear to me, in my ignorance and innocence, that you're going to actually be quite difficult to actually use it as a garage because of the turning circle to get into it. It's slightly difficult.
I can assure you, councillor, that I have looked at this, and yes, there's sufficient an ample turning area. I've been designing for 45 years.
Yeah, yes,
and I've used this particular design on numerous brand new developments, and I can assure you that cars will be able to enter, egress and ingress into that garage perfectly well within the boundaries of the site itself.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors.
We'll move back to, no, actually, I've got Sam Casey Ray here as a ward councillor, but I don't see her. She's certainly not in the room and she's not online, so we'll pass on that one. And we'll go back to the planning officer for questions for Sharon. Anyone's got any?
Sharon, the resident of number 13 mentioned that she had a photograph and we didn't see it.
I haven't had that. Okay. I haven't
think
seen.
I had an email from her.
It was emailed. Okay.
Personally, but there was photographs with that, but
You got that.
yeah, but that was not part of the application. That was yeah.
I would have included it with the display if I'd had it, but it's not been sent to me, unfortunately.
And may I ask the officer?
His questions, yes. Yeah.
So Sharon, did you have a discussion with regards to what Joe raised, the orientation of that barn, and what Councillor Dragonetti said about? Because if it had been oriented differently on the boundary and the land, then it wouldn't have impacted, and the access would have been better, and we wouldn't even probably be discussing it. Was there a reason why it's there apart from public can't see it, which seemed to be what that answer was?
There hasn't been any discussion between us as officers with the applicant. The layout is as it was when it was submitted.
Right.
Right.
Seems daft.
Any further questions? So, is it worth pointing out that this is a two-part application, so we will be voting on the listed building part for the barn, and then we will need to vote on the whole of it, which includes the garage. So we can separate the two out if we wish. Yeah. Not saying too much. Right, if you're finished with questions, I'm looking for a proposal, please. For which one we're going to go for? Let's go for the listed building first. So for 23 S2545 listed building, do I have a proposal? That's right.
Accept and go officer's recommendation.
Officer's recommendation. Yeah, and that's seconded. Do we need to discuss it? Yes, Councillor Sadler.
Yeah, I wonder whether some condition can be put onto the staircase at the rear.
This is purely
And that's
listed
different
building.
application.
No, that's
Purely looking at the bar.
That's the listed building. Sorry.
You're right, you're right.
Looking at the bar.
The staircase is the new one. The gallant.
That's
Yeah.
the second
The
part.
staircase is a new, but the barn picture shows the staircase from the rear.
The barn has lots of condition on it already because it is a listed building. Maybe I was going to Sharon and say, are there any conditions that are specific for the barn?
Yeah.
Because you've lumped them all together, haven't you? Okay.
No, we do have the full list of conditions for the listed building application after the planning application.
Okay. Yeah. Condition for the listed building consent, they're on page 139. And because it's a listed building, all sorts of other rules, regulations come in that you don't need to condition because they're there anyway. Yeah. Okay, so I have a proposal for that one to officer's recommendation. Do we need further discussion? I'll go back. Who? Catherine, you proposed it, so I'll go back for you to sum up if there is anything to do.
There really isn't. It's very straightforward. I think there's no objection to this barn being developed. So it needs its listed building consent. I think we just go ahead and.
Yeah, okay. So we'll go for a vote on that one. All those in favour? Thank you. That is nearly unanimous. Those against?
Just abstaining.
He's abstaining. All right. So we'll then need to go to the other one, which is P23 S2544. I'll give a proposal for that one. Catherine.
Accept officer's recommendation.
So I'll pay officer's recommendation for approval.
Yes.
Yeah, is that seconded? I will second it. Okay. To allow debate to take place. Do you wish to speak, please?
Well, as far as I can see, I think what the officer's report says and what we've heard from the agent does actually very clearly address the concerns of the, I mean, obviously one takes neighbours' concerns seriously, but I think they have been adequately addressed on both those counts. And I therefore don't think there's any reason to withhold permission. And every opportunity has been taken to make sure that this building will not have be intrusive to the neighbour or very much. I mean, the thing that's regrettable, obviously, and I think some people may well have considerable problems with, is the removal of the tree and the hedge. But that again is something that can be addressed in mitigation conditions. So I would suggest that we accept that as a recommendation.
Yeah, I as a secondary guy, so I speak and say, I do agree that. I think if I was putting this application in for the start, I would change it. But we have to look at what's been put to us. And as the officer has said, there are no reasons, really planning reasons, to refuse this. Yeah, therefore I would go with the opposite recommendation. I can't see any reason to refuse it, but we'll go with the opposite recommendation. Okay, so it's been proposed and seconded. Is the debate? Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Rob?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm not going to support the recommendation. I have deep concern about this. Yes, it's on balance, but I think unfortunately the balance for me is tipped in favour of going against the recommendation. I think this garage is too large. I think it's overbearing on the neighbours at number 13. I think that it's harmful to the setting of the listed building, potentially, or that at least if it were to be appropriately positioned in order to respect the neighbours at number 13, it would be harmful. So I think by virtue of its size, its dominance, its impact on the neighbours, and I think its design, I completely understand what the agent has said regarding design, and he said that he's designed these many times before. I think the design in this case is somewhat formulaic, and I don't think it recognises the proximity to the neighbour and the impact on the neighbour, and I think more effort should have been made to minimise the size and the impact. And I have real concerns about it. So for that reason, I won't be supporting the officer recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gordon-Green.
No, go ahead.
Councillor Rob has expressed exactly my own thoughts. The applicant, as we see on the application site, owns quite a bit of more land there up to courthouse, the original listed building. So there's plenty of land, and they didn't have to. I don't think they have to put that garage quite as much in the face of the cottage number 12, isn't it? Well, they're back onto. You know, they could have. It could be in the other side of that. The existing plot could be realigned. You know, 90 degrees to what it is. It could be. You know, we've rushed much further away, and I think it's completely. And I would object to it on the grounds that it's unneighbourly. And we object to things on being unneighbourly. Sometimes when they're forced to be unneighbourly, but in this case, it's not forced to be unneighbourly, but it just is being inappropriate and unnecessary. So I don't support the recommendation, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Councillor Dragaletti. Councillor Gordon-Green.
Yes, I think the build form relative to the listed building is inappropriate, and the impact is going to be forced unneighbourliness, and it could definitely, there's choices about where it could be sited, so I would not be supporting this.
Okay, Councillor Sandler.
Just throw my weight in there as well. So I very much agree with Councillor Rob and Councillor Dragaletti in terms of unneighbourly and overbearing. I totally echo Councillor Dragaletti's point that garage could be sited just about anywhere else on that land. They own it all anyway. So to build something there, to destroy apple trees and hedges and things like that, seems completely unnecessary.
Okay, thank you. We've all spoken. So we'll go. Oh, I'll go back to Councillor Keith-Rowan to sum up. Is there to do?
Well, I can't really add much more than what you and I have already said. I think that, you know, that there isn't a lot of wiggle room with this. I mean, what I've heard makes me feel that this is acceptable as is. I do accept it could be elsewhere, possibly, but that's not entirely the point here, is it? It's about what we've got, and I will go ahead with
Okay, thank you.
the recommendation for the support.
We'll go straight to the vote. Those in favour of the proposal for Alice's recommendation, please show. Those against. So that proposal is lost. Okay, I now need another proposal.
I propose the reject the officer's recommendation and refuse consent on the basis of the garage in its positioning and aspect is unneighbourly.
Can we offer some advice in respect of the difference between the planning application and the listed building application, please, if it's okay, before it goes any further?
Yeah.
Yes, I just want to clarify the reason for refusal with members. What I was hearing is that you thought that the having a garage per se is not necessarily a problem. It's just where it's located. So the design is acceptable in terms of the set.
I think it's overbearing and too big as well.
Okay,
The
so
size and the
size,
situation, the location. And I do have concerns about the design as well. Which fits in with the size.
It's all those three together.
It is. Yeah. And all of that amounts to a very bulky, overbearing, unlabelling impact.
So we're going with neighbour impact, not harmful to the conservation area, not inappropriate development in the greenbelt. Just to.
Why don't we throw it in?
Because you have to defend each of those grounds to.
You don't have to win on all of them. What's the strongest one?
So I think the key concern is around the size, the location, dominance of this building, and the unneighbourly impact upon number 12. I've got the numbers right. So I think that I'm hearing is the key concern, and it's just important that we articulate, obviously, in the event of an appeal situation, the key concerns that members have.
Are we allowed to bring in the fact that the current proposal removes biodiversity rich apple tree? Are we allowed to bring that in? And because an ancient hedgerow, are they protected under the counts?
My overview is that wouldn't form part of the refusal reason. It would be referred to in a general sense in the text that we supply in relation to the appeal documentation. We would make that point that would be involved. But my advice is not to specifically refer to it in the reason for refusal.
And I had the recommendation for approval being accepted, there was a condition in saying that we were securing replacements for the hedge and the apple tree.
Not okay for me.
So where are we?
So in respect of the planning application, we've given you advice around a potential reason for refusal for that, which is about enablingness and referring to the size, location, dominance of the building. In respect of the listed building application, that's a different matter because that's about work.
And that's gone through.
Yeah.
So it's not to do with the objection is not to do with the barn, it's all to do with this the garage, which the committee are considering is overbearing. It's
unlabelly.
Oh, it's unlabelly certainly. Overbearing.
Dominant.
Dominance not very the same. Dominance. It's inappropriate in a conservation.
It's bulk scale and
conservation. It's a green belt, isn't it?
It's okay, I think, in the conservation area. But in my view.
We're going to be sure we get what we're
Can we also add character and appearance because its size, bulk scale and massing, it's almost equivalent to the dwelling at number 12 in terms of its size.
Yeah.
And there it is on the boundary.
Yeah.
Very dominant, very overbearing.
Yeah, it is big. It's too big.
I think we can capture the key concerns there back to size, location, dominance are the sort of key things that are going through. And we'll refer to the appropriate policy.
Mentioned there's still going to be road at the bridge. That's just.
So the proposal as a whole will whether or not we include distracting from the character and appearance of the site.
Yes.
There's going to be driveway through the site. Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to support the proposal, but I'm of sympathies. So really, it's dominance. It's unneighbourly for a start. It's the dominance in the. Is it in the green belt? I can't remember.
It is. Yeah. I think by virtue of its scale, massing, bulk, blah blah, and positioning, it's harmful to the character of the site, the area.
So we will include both neighbouring impacts and impact on the financial appearance of the area as well.
Yeah. Due to its bulk and location.
Okay.
This bulk has got to go in there, hasn't it? It's got to be the size can. Yeah. Okay. If we're all happy that those are the reasons for recommending for refusal, and I'll put that to the vote. All those.
No one's sorry, Chair, can we have a second?
You propose it.
No, Peter proposed.
Oh, you proposed it.
Thank you, Chair.
and-
Yeah, you proposed it.
You did.
You did, you did.
Oh, well,
I'm seconding.
I bet you got-
Yes.
Seconded and,
I better go to use some up there, haven't I?
oh,
Before we go.
what do I say? Yes.
Just say.
Nothing to say, it's,
Told me to say
it's,
that.
it's correct that this application is for a building that says two dominant and neighbourly.
It's a dominant bill.
Yep.
Right, I go to the votes. All those in favour of the proposal for refusal on the ground that we just discussed, please show. That is 4. Against the proposal is 1 and I'm abstaining. Thank you, committee.
Are we done?
Well done.
Susan,
Why is
can
that
we
so
end the
McDonald's?
broadcast, please?
Sorry?
Axel McDonald has joined. I don't know why. I thought.
I've been here all the time, thank you.
But he did cut out applications.
Very diligent representative.
He's a diligent member.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Axel.